Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining your May MSP Channel Update webinar. My name is Lexi Strickland, and I'm a part of the Global Partner Revenue Enablement team here at Cloud Software Group. Like always, we have a filled agenda today, so let's move on to some of our housekeeping items before we begin. The session is being recorded, and the presentation deck and recording will be posted to the MSP resource page on Sales IQ for those of you who would like to rewatch, or for those of you who would like to pass on to anyone unable to join us today. If you do have a question, please use that Q&A feature within the Zoom platform. While we will not have a live Q&A on this session, we do always follow up following the call and connect you to an appropriate resource where needed. For our agenda today, I'm going to kick things off with announcements, then move over to our new reorganized MSP resource page on Sales IQ. Our MSP program manager, Alice Hongthong, will briefly walk through the new minimum order quantities resource. Then I'm going to hand it over to Stuart Parkington, Principal Partner Technology Strategist, and he is going to present a majority of the session today on the tips, tricks, and best practices for the License Usage Insights tool, also referred to as Bluey. We'll wrap things up, and then I'll send you on your way. Great. So let's head over to those quick announcements. For the month of May, we currently do not have any ad hoc partner webinars scheduled, but we do have our reoccurring technical webinars. You can watch the sessions on demand or register for the series moving forward. The first is our technical channel update. So this month, we are going over the new standardized NetScaler gateway templates that reduce deployment time from days to minutes. And also we're going into how you can demo and win with Citrix Analytics through really a technical focused use cases. The second is our partner Tech Talk, and this will do a deep dive into the new Citrix Workspace app user experience update and roadmap. All right, let's jump over to our new MSP resource page. If you go on to Sales IQ, you'll notice that this page is different. We have reorganized it. We've gotten rid of outdated materials. We've updated with new ones. And really, we're trying to put an emphasis on micro learnings. So in addition to these longer base trainings, which is what you're on right now, you're going to find on this page that we have very concise and specific materials to address your questions. So really a quick one-pager or a 1 to 2 minute video that synthesizes the questions that you're asking in an easy, digestible format. So let's take a look at the page together on Sales IQ. All right, so you are going to log into Sales IQ. From there, in your search bar, just type in MSP resource page. It's the first one on my list. We have highlighted the page, so click on that. And here is our new page. So a lot of things for you to check out. You can hear from Mike Fouts, our VP of Global Service Providers. We have quick links over to some of our other partner resource pages. Distributors for you, we do have a dedicated page for you and resources there. We have multiple topics ranging from our pricing and purchasing, which the segment that Alice Hongthong is doing today on minimum order quantities, you'll find the resources listed in this section. Moving down, if you look at our program section, if you missed last month's webinar, we did go into how to renew your partner membership, how often that happens, and the steps to take to do so. So we have that video as well as a one-pager to support you. We also have our program documentation and guides. Moving down, we have a section on Louis. So similarly to the recording that Alice is doing today and how it will be posted to the page, Stuart Parkington's recording about the tips and tricks on Louis will be posted to this page. So if you click through, you can see them all listed there. Then we have information regarding licensing, then technical, and then our webinars. So again, if you want to revisit any of the past webinars, if you want to check out the recordings, you can see them here. Last but not least, we have our marketing resources, and then coming soon, we will continue to iterate on this page and include other helpful resources and training. So I invite you to come and check out this page, play around with it, look through the program documentation. We will continue to update it as new resources become available. And if you would ever like to see any additional resources or helpful process guides, anything like that, please just reach out to your partner sales manager or myself, and I will help get added to the page. All right, moving over to our next topic. It's my pleasure to welcome Alice Hongthong, who is going to go over our minimum order quantities resource and how you and your teams can leverage. Alice?
Hi, everybody. Alice Hongthong here to talk to you about a new tool that we have that will hopefully help you out. So this is around minimum order quantities. I've got a copy of it up here on the screen, but you'll be able to find the tool on Sales IQ. And this offers a plethora of information for you in addition to minimum order quantities. First, we've laid out this products, we've laid it out based on the products in alphabetical order. So if you have the name of a product, easy to find on this list. Second of all, we've indicated which business unit of the cloud software group that this product belongs to. Thirdly is the minimum order quantity. So note that some of these have stars next to them with some caveats and some things that you might want to look out for. But for the most part, all the minimum order quantities are listed. What's also listed is whether the product is in the cloud or on-prem. And lastly, which is also very important, is how to access this product. So whether it's available in the CSP license tool, or you may have to place a $0 PO with your CSP distributor. So lots of information here. We hope that's very helpful for you, and we hope that it clears up any confusion you might have around how to access these products, both new orders and renewals. Thanks a lot, everyone. Have a great day.
Thanks, Alice. Now it's my pleasure to hand it over to Stuart Parkington to go over Louis, its tips, tricks, and best practices.
Thank you, Lexi. My name is Stuart Parkington, and I am a partner technology strategist on the MSP team in Europe. Having been part of the MSP team for nearly 10 years and involved with the Citrix License Usage Insight, or LUIS service, since it was first introduced as a tool to assist MSP reporting, today I am going to present some tips, tricks, best practices, and a couple of gotchas with regard to the LUIS service for MSPs. On last month's CSP channel update, you were introduced to LUIS, informed as to the origins of the service, why it is needed, and how it can be used to reduce the burden of MSP usage collection. LUIS allows MSP partners to report usage accurately in a timely manner and thus reduce the risk of any reporting penalties that might be accrued. If you missed the introduction, it is available on demand from the License Usage Insight resource page on Sales IQ. Additionally, there are 6 more short videos on the same page that will walk you through the value proposition, how to access the service, how traditional and on-premise usage is shown, how to manage your zero-cost users, how to see NetScaler usage, and lastly, how cloud and on-premise reporting on LUIS compares. I do not intend to repeat the information contained within those videos, but maybe to emphasize a few points and to build on the knowledge contained therein, with some of my experience and those from other MSP PTSs, and the wider MSP community. Firstly, I would like to emphasize the point made in the introduction about the version of Citrix license server that is recommended. I would always recommend the most recent version of the product be used, as that ensures the most up-to-date features are available, as well as any potential security vulnerabilities are addressed. The Citrix license server is backward compatible and can be used to provide licensing for any CVAD version and is not a component that makes up part of the long-term service release or LTSR. Therefore, if you are taking advantage of an LTSR version to ensure a long life cycle and support window, you can upgrade the license server component without risking your environment failing an LTSR validity check. When it comes to installing the Citrix licensing server, one of the steps of the installation wizard will provide you with the options for license server data reporting. When you get to this step of the wizard, please do not select the neither of the above option. MSP licensing must be reported into Citrix, and whilst it is currently only anecdotally acknowledged, selecting that option appears to set an option that can then only be reset by manually editing configuration files on the license server. If you set this option to neither of those, it appears the license server will refuse to call home and thus prevent any data being sent to LUI. There is no need to select this option, so please don't. Once the on-prem license server is installed, the first time you access the Citrix Licensing Manager, you will be presented with this screen. This suggests that you will only be able to access license users insights by registering your license server with Citrix Cloud, and that if you do register, your license server will automatically be able to renew licensing. Whilst this is the case with resold CSA-style licensing, it is not applicable to MSP licenses and thus license servers. For MSP licensing, you will automatically have access to the LUI service and be able to access all the data and reports therein, assuming that is the server is physically able to call home. Furthermore, MSP traditional on-prem licensing has to be manually renewed every 24 months. There is currently no auto-renew option available for MSPs. To renew an on-prem CVAD license, you must retrieve new licenses from the MSP license retrieval tool on Citrix Partner Central and replace the existing licenses by allocating and uploading new ones. Details of how you can do this are available on Sales IQ. Within the Citrix License Manager, in the Settings, Usage and Statistics page, you again have the option to select what data will be reported. Again, do not select the neither of the above option, but instead I recommend you select the top option. However, you do not need to click the register button because there is no need to register an MSP license server for it to be able to report into LUI. This is because within the MSP license file, there is a flag setting that automatically triggers reporting. So as long as you don't explicitly prevent call home, i.e. you don't select the neither of the above option, and the license server can access the internet, MSP reporting will be automatic. Not registering your license server is a recommended best practice for MSPs to ensure the least amount of potential issues are faced. However, if you do still feel a compulsion to register the license server, which if done correctly should not create any problems, it is extremely important that when registering you use the organizational details, the org ID, and the Citrix Cloud account of the MSP partner who allocated the licenses in use, and not the details of the end customer. My advice though, that there is no requirement to register a license server as call home is automatically triggered and access to the LUI service is automatic for MSP partners. Once you have your license server installed, you need to get onto Citrix Cloud to access LUI. For new MSP partners onboarding to Citrix Cloud, please do not fill in the details in the form. Instead, click the usercitrix.com or My Citrix account button and log in with your Citrix Partner Central credentials. That way your Citrix Cloud account will be linked to your MSP Partner Central account, and you will see the LUI service within the console. If you just fill in the form, you will become a standard customer and then have no access to any partner tools, including LUI. If you don't happen to have a Partner Central account, talk to your Citrix organizational administrator within Partner Central, that is, or your distribution contact who will be able to assist. The person who onboards the MSP organization will become the first and only administrator of the MSP's Citrix Cloud account. I heartily recommend, therefore, that the very first thing that person does, as soon as they have access to Citrix Cloud, is to add another administrator. Don't become the single administrator and thus the single point of failure. Additional admins can be added via an email address. So add that second account by sending an invitation to the appropriate email address. There is the ability to configure other identity providers, such as Azure Active Directory, to add and manage additional admins. But I would recommend to maintain at least 2 admins using a Citrix identity, i.e. an email address, as a failsafe. Any admin, no matter what identity provider is in use, can then access LUI providing they have the correct rights. And once they can access LUI, they can get the correct numbers to report to distribution. Moving on, let's take a look at some aspects relating to the actual use of LUI for traditional or on-premise license usage. The default screen shown when you access LUI is the on-prem CVAD license server status page. The service already knows about each license server based on the license allocation data stored in the Citrix back office. Using this data, LUI presents a list of license servers with licenses allocated. Note that this could contain license servers that have been decommissioned if the associated license allocated has not been returned via Partner Central. To be compliant with the managed service provider licensing guidelines, all active license servers must be updated to a version capable of phoning home. If the license server is successfully phoning home, it will be identified as compliant in the service list with a green tick. A timestamp of the most recent usage data upload is also provided. Errors, alerts, and warnings will be displayed alongside any server that is not identified as compliant and thus requires attention. And what I refer to as big, scary warnings will be displayed for any alert that is becoming urgent. These will start by being amber initially, but will become red as they get more critical. 2 important points to note here. If there are any warnings shown against any license server listed, firstly, you need to take, or to get ready to take, in case of an expiring license, proactive action soon. Warnings should not be ignored. Secondly, you need to manually validate the usage data before reporting usage to distribution. For instance, if one or more license servers have stopped reporting, the call home numbers shown in LUI will be incorrect, as they will not include the usage from those servers. Thus, you will need to manually amend the report to distribution to account for the servers that have missed their call home. To help understand what each of the warnings mean and provide some of the probable causes and resolutions, I have prepared a brief working document which will accompany this session. Within LUI, we have the ability to mark an entire license server as free. You do this first by selecting the ellipse menu to the right of the license server, and then by clicking the View Details options. Doing this will present the details of the selected server and allow you to change the server type from paid to free. But why might you do this? Because within the terms of the Managed Service Provider Program Guide, it states, for on-premise licenses, you may create a mirror of your production environment, including the license server, for the purposes of disaster recovery and/or lab test environments. Users then that only consume a license from the free license server are automatically flagged as free or zero cost users. I'll come back to free users later. The next page I want to take a look at is the CVAD usage page. This provides an aggregated view for a specific period of the usage of CVAD products for all editions pertinent to CSPs, thus enabling service providers to easily understand product usage without the need for additional utilities or tools. The service will automatically aggregate product usage across all licensed servers to provide a complete view of usage across all deployments. For each product, it will provide the aggregated count of active users, the active paid user count, i.e. the number of users for each edition that need to be reported for the period, assuming all licensed servers on the server status page are compliant, and the count of free zero-cost users claimed. Selecting the expansion option to the right of each line will display further details for usage of a particular CVAD edition. The detail view will show the active usage per license server, showing the paid and free user ratio for each of those. Should the license server be dedicated to a specific tenant, this data facilitates a simple billing arrangement for individual single tenant customers. The same page will also show the amount of usage across the entire estate of compliant license servers where the user has not been associated with a particular end customer. This could be because all tenants have a dedicated license server, thus usage for each customer can be seen via that view, or because there are several tenants sharing a single license server and all of those tenants are under the 100 user minimum threshold where linking becomes a programmatic requirement. You should, however, remember that there is a programmatic requirement to link tenants of more than 100 users to a Citrix Cloud account. This is stated in the Managed Service Provider Program Guide and thus should be implemented for all tenants that hit that threshold. Whilst out of scope of this particular webinar, there is information and a video that walks you through the process, which I believe was both available on Sales IQ. I said I would return to free users or zero cost user management, so here we are. LUI allows for partners to manage a list of free users. Within the users page, all users that have consumed the license for the period selected are listed, and the administrator can set each of those users as free in turn by simply selecting the option to the right of their name. All users are paid users until they are marked as free, unless they have consumed a license from and only from a license server that is free. These users will have a grey, unselectable tick next to them, while manually marked users will have a teal-coloured selectable tick mark. Free zero-cost users should be marked as free during the month in which you want to claim them. It is not advisable to leave them to the end of the month. Free users, once marked as free, remain marked as free until the check mark is manually removed. Free user management allows service providers to take full advantage of the MSP licensing program that supports trial, test, and administrative users free of charge. And whilst looking at free user management, it should be noted that the total that any user can claim as free may not exceed 3% of paid users. Note, this is not a requirement or a target, this is the maximum that you can claim. It should also be noted that partners cannot claim free users for internal business use. Those are paid users, but only for users who consume a license in the running of their service, such as development, testing, demonstration, or Citrix admin users. Lastly, with regard to free user management, it should also be noted that between the 1st and the 10th day of each month, it is also possible to mark users free from a previous billing cycle. During that period, you can turn on the previous term setting and select free users for the previous billing cycle. After the 10th of the month, Citrix Cloud no longer allows the previous term total setting to be active. That's why you should try and mark your free users free during the month you want to claim them. The free users that you have selected in a given month are accounted for when you are billed for paid users. When you change the status of a free user to a paid user, Citrix records the date of the change and includes that user in the billing cycle for which the change occurred. By default, Usernames associated with Citrix Virtual Apps and desktop licenses will be securely reported to Citrix Cloud. User information is limited to a single user at domain entry. No additional personal information is phoned home, and Citrix does not share any of this information anywhere. If desired, however, the username anonymization feature is available. To anonymize the user data on the license server, edit the simple license service config XML file and ensure that the usage-based billing scramble stanza contains an integer of 1. This will anonymize the user at domain information sent to Citrix Cloud and replace it with a one-way hash value. It should be remembered, however, that when anonymization is enabled, zero cost usage is no longer available for reporting. You cannot claim free usage when you anonymize your user data. Citrix eDocs for the license server, which is linked on this slide, provides the specific details of what needs to be done. The license server needs to be able to access the internet in order to call home. And whilst the license server should be able to utilize the Windows Automatic Proxy Detection feature, it is often simpler to manually set the proxy server using the same simple license server config XML file as we used previously. Setting the proxy server this way is also described in the license server documentation, and there's a link to that section on the slide. Please note, authenticated proxies are not supported. So if an authenticated proxy is in use, an exception would need to be established on the proxy server from the license server to Citrix Cloud. One situation which regularly occurs but is easy to explain is when a partner sees duplicate entries on the server status screen for a particular license server. This is caused when a virtual license server is motioned between virtualization hosts and a new checksum, which is generated from hardware characteristics of the machine, is created. LUI thus sees the two as unique servers, even though in reality they are not. When this occurs, you will see one entry marked as not reporting and the duplicate as reporting. Having these duplicate entries does not affect the aggregate usage count, but it does cause confusion, particularly if you take my earlier advice that any server with a warning needs proactive action. To prevent or minimize this occurrence, pin your license server VM to a particular virtualization host. CVAD can withstand an outage of the license server for 24 hours, so downing the virtualization host for maintenance and thus losing connection to the license server for a period should not create any outage. If you are unable to pin the VM for any reason, ensure that you maintain as many virtual hardware characteristics for the VM, such as the NIC or the MAC address, that your virtualization platform will allow you to keep when motioning machines from one host to another. Another gotcha that I regularly see is the phantom VMware plugin entry in the server status listing. Here you will see the actual production server as not reporting, but an unknown phantom server with the host name of a VMware plugin is reporting. The entry for that server will also show a warning saying not found in back office. If you see this situation, check your local host file on the license server for an entry of 127.0.0.1 pointing to VMware plugin and remove it if it is there. Once removed, the production server should start calling home again within 24 hours. I should admit that I do not know the effect on the VMware software the removal of this entry will make, but nobody to date has told me that removing it has caused any problem with their VMware estate. Your mileage may vary. The phantom server will eventually drop off the listing, but it might take up to 2 months for it to do so, depending on when within the month you remove the entry. Be patient, it will eventually drop. Let me move on to NetScaler or ADC call home reporting. For NetScaler to call home MSP usage, it must be at least version 12.1. Versions prior to 12.1 did not have the required feature set. It must be able to name resolve the Citrix domains it needs to contact. DNS thus needs to be configured to enable name resolution. Lastly, it must be able to connect to the internet from its Netscaler IP address or interface. Whilst call home should be automatically triggered by the use of an MSP Netscaler license, it is useful to manually check that the feature is enabled, particularly if you're renewing licensing from an older licensing file. To access Netscaler call home data, you need to select the drop-down and then select networking. This will display the Netscaler status page, which shows similar details, i.e. errors, alerts, warnings, as the license server status page did for CVAD. Again, any error or warning requires proactive action by the service provider. The export functionality here is useful for confirming reporting requirements, as this will allow you to export via the CSV file your entire Netscaler allocation, included but not restricted to MSP Netscaler licensing. Using the export and some filters, you can then filter out any non-MSP allocations, as well as any HA secondary node allocations that are MSP licensed, because, again, quoting the Managed Service Provider Program Guide, if an ADC VPX is deployed as passive, then only the one ADC VPX must be reported and paid for each month. This is a unique MSP program benefit and derives from the program using an active usage licensing model. Switching from on-premise licensing to Citrix Cloud usage, before looking at the reporting features of license usage insights, I think it is important to quickly revisit why active usage is particularly relevant for cloud services. Basically, active usage is a key indicator of the value of a cloud service. If the end user sees a high active usage, he is likely to perceive the service as high value and be open to service expansions or new service provider offerings. Where, however, they see a low month-on-month usage, they are equally likely to question the cost of the service and challenge if they are oversubscribed or paying for something that they not need paid for. Therefore, with any cloud service, it is important to size and scale the entitlement, aka licenses, used and position in order to position a healthy, high-value service. LUI can help you maintain this status. From the product dropdown, selecting Desktop as a Service will present the status page. Similar to the on-premises pages, the page shows, for a specific reporting period, the aggregated active usage for both single and multi-tenant customers. The page shows you the aggregate count of service entitlements that were ordered in the total licenses column, the total active users across all tenants in the total users column, which represents the totals that should be reported to distribution, and the license overage, i.e. usage over the ordered quantity. With MSP, the overage figure is not directly pertinent to the costs for the end customer, as it is an active user count that really matters. But if it does become overly large, it will start to make the service look under-provisioned and lead to questions from key stakeholders. As we shall see shortly, MSP expansion SKUs should be used to minimize overage and keep the entitlement, quote, in the green. Selecting the drop-down 7 to the right of the multi-tenant account will bring up the detailed view of multi-tenant use and provide an easy way for users of the multi-tenant DaaS service to bill their end customers. Many of the LUI features available for on-premise licensing are currently not available for Desktop as a Service reporting. Features such as the ability to list users consuming a license or to be able to mark them as zero-cost users are not yet implemented. The good news is that many, if not all, are planned, and in a future MSP channel update, the partner-facing product management team will be presenting a LUI roadmap session, so stay tuned. In order to maintain high usage, high value service, I recommend you try and keep each of your tenants' license usage at a high percentage, 80 or 90%, and, quote, in the green. When it starts to get to 100%, and certainly when it starts to go way beyond that, look to the MSP expansion SKUs for either multi or single tenant services to keep it looking healthy. This will avoid end user utilization questions by not looking over or undersubscribed, and also ensure that any back-end service instances are properly scaled to support the quantity ordered. So where do you start? My normal recommendation is to determine your maximum expected usage. That is the maximum number of active users you expect in a given month, and add maybe 10% on top for some overhead. If your estimation is reasonably accurate, that should provide a reasonable starting point for high usage, which you can then top up with the expansion SKUs if necessary. Don't, however, simply over-provision, or you risk the customer thinking that you've over-provisioned them and they are paying for something they don't need. Don't be afraid of using a little bit of overage, but remember those expansion SKUs to prevent it from going too far, quote, in the red. Remember also that the aggregated gateway service bandwidth allowance is 1 GB per user. So bear that in mind as well and scale that appropriately along the same lines. Most importantly here is to monitor and watch both your DAS active user and your gateway service bandwidth monthly and adjust with your top-up SKUs as necessary. And that's it for this session. I hope it has proved useful and you have found some of the information, tips, tricks, etc. of benefit. Please feel free to reach out to any of your local PTS or PSMs if you have further questions regarding Louis. Thank you. And with that, I will hand it back to Lexi.
That does it for today. If you have any questions, as always, please feel free to follow up to myself or your partner sales manager or your local channel ops team. Otherwise, we will follow up with the resources mentioned on this call in email, as well as posting it to Sales IQ. So since the page is updated and has new materials, highly recommend you go and check out that new resource page following the call. With that, it was my pleasure speaking with you all today, and we will see you in June.